Hello and welcome to a Prime Time webinar, a webinar hosted by PrimeInvestor.in. My name is Srikanth. I am a co-founder of Prime Investor. Today's webinar is going to be on the topic of stock picking, right? I mean, it's a very favorite topic, a topic that a lot of people have wanted us to do a webinar on. We are going to take a very prudent approach, a calculated, a methodical approach to defining what the right way is to picking stocks that are likely to win over the long term. This webinar will be structured in three parts. The first part, Bhavana Acharya will be presenting the first part. She'll be talking about the tools and metrics that you should be using for picking winning stocks. She'll be setting the context for the thesis that we'll be presenting to you today. And once she is done, our equity analyst Chandra Chudamani will be giving you, using what Bhavna just presented, he'll be giving you a lot of live examples as to the various screeners, the various ranking tools and methods that you can be using to shortlist the list of stocks that you could be potentially investing in. Once we are done with that, right, we will have a short list of stocks, various short lists of stocks, depending upon the various criteria that we use. And Vidya Bala will step in and say what you should be doing at that point of time to further analyze, further contextualize your choices and provide a list of investable stocks. This is a very vast topic that we'll be covering today, and we'll try to do as much justice as we can given the time constraints, but we'll be using a lot of examples and giving demonstrations so that it'll be useful and directly relevant and applicable for you. Time permitting, we do want to take questions after these presentations are over. And just one thing, please keep your questions to the topics that were presented in the webinar. Please don't ask questions like, what do you think about the stock? What do you think about ITC? What do you think about, HUL and things like that? We will not be taking such stock-specific opinion questions. And you can place your questions in the chat window. I will be curating the chat window while the webinar is going on, and I will be presenting the questions to the team, and we'll be answering the questions during the QA session. So with those few words, once again, I thank you for taking your time on a Saturday morning to be with us, and welcome to Primetime Webinar. And I hand you over now to Bhavana Acharya. Bhavana, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Shrikant. Good morning, everyone. Let's get started, shall we? So, in March last year, a stock that would have been a great value buy would be Infosys. Why? Because its valuations were low. It had just gone through its whole management upheaval that had happened. It was past it, and IT stocks in general had been underperforming up until that point. And with the whole global lockdown that was happening, a lot of digitization opportunities were opening up. So if you had picked Infosys in March last year, that stock would have delivered 196%. In a one-year period, in fact, Infosys is still up 118%, and that compares very well with 53% in the Nifty index, right? But how would you have known that Infosys was a great buy last year? If you were a seasoned investor, if you had been tracking markets, listening to commentary, and being aware of where opportunities and all lie, it wouldn't have been too difficult for you to know that opportunities are opening up there. But if you're not a seasoned investor, right, what was going to happen? You may not have ever found this out. And if you are a new investor, if you have not, observed markets long enough, then you would be looking at, different stocks. You would be trying and doing your analysis on any stock that you would have read about or seen or heard about. And that would lead you to spending a lot of time just trying to understand a stock, and at the end of it may not even be time well spent, because the stock may not be worth buying. So then, in such a scenario where you don't have enough understanding about which sector is opening up, which sector is good, which stock is good, how the sector interplay and all happens, then how do you pick stocks? Okay, so that is what we are going to cover now in this webinar. And the way you approach stock picking, if you want to streamline your approach, if you want to do it efficiently, let's say, you follow a 2-level process. Okay, the first level is you take this big universe of stocks, whether it's a Nifty 500 or the Nifty listed stocks or whatever it is. You take this big universe of stocks across sectors, across market capitalizations, everything. And then you need to narrow it down into a small set of stocks, a short list. Okay, what that would do is to prevent you from going all over the place trying to find stocks, and you can, on that short list, do the next level of analysis, which is really get into the stock, dig in, read management commentary, read reports, look at performance, where performances come from, where it can go, right? And that way you will be able to better approach stock picking, because you are narrowing down the list into a select set of companies and then spending all that time to see whether those companies are worth investing or not. So that makes it more likely that you will find stocks worth investing in. That makes it more efficient use of your time and effort, because let's face it, stock investing takes a lot of time. Stock analysis takes a lot of time. Okay, so how do you do this level 1? Okay, we'll cover both level 1 and level 2 in this webinar. So how do you do level 1? That is simply applying stock screeners. Okay, so what is a stock screener? You have different ratios, you have different financial metrics, whether it is ROE, ROCE, profit margins, turnover ratios, whatever it is. You have a whole bunch of metrics. Now you take those metrics, okay, set certain criteria, take this big universe of stocks, apply that criteria, and only those stocks that meet that criteria will become your shortlist. Then that shortlist, you go ahead and dig in deeper. So now, how do you approach this stock screener? All right. If there are 2 ways, we have 2 tools at Prime Investor. We have 2 tools that will help you arrive at the shortlist, using these screeners and arrive at the shortlist. And we'll go through that now. But before we do that, whatever financial metrics that you take, whatever ratio analysis that you're doing, whatever financial analysis you're doing on a company's numbers, all those ratios will tell you one of 3 aspects about the company. The first is its growth. How well is it growing? How fast are the revenues growing? How fast are the profits growing, net profits growing? Because we want high growth companies, right? How are the margins expanding, right? So the first aspect that you want to look at is the growth. The second is and arguably more important, is the quality aspect of it. That is, how strong is its balance sheet? Because growth there can be certain years where growth completely takes a hit, some years where growth is really good. So if a company has to go through a period of poor performance and a period of good performance, it needs a fundamentally sound balance sheet, right? Take banks, for example. No matter how quickly it's able to pick up market share, how aggressive its loan book is, no matter how much interest it's getting, if its capital is not adequate enough, if it's not able to keep its NPAs under control, we have seen that it completely pulls the bank under. So even if you are high growth, unless you are fundamentally qualitatively strong, it is not really going to help in the long term. Okay, so that is the second aspect which financial ratios will tell you, the quality of it. The third aspect is the valuations. And valuations, not just the valuation on its own, you need to see how it is in relation to its peers, how it is in relation to its own history. Okay, so this is how you need to bucket the metrics that you are seeing, is it telling you about the growth of the company? Is it telling you about how qualitatively, how fundamentally strong it is? Or is it telling you about what the valuations are? Okay. And this approach is what we have taken in our stock tools, in both the stock ranking and in the stock screener. This is how we have approached it while building the tools. And this is also how we approach it when we do our own stock analysis, when we do our own stock recommendations. So let me show you how you can use these tools and come up with that shortlist. Right, so just hold on. Let me just share my screen with you. Okay, so this is our stock ranking tool. Now we have done this ranking on the Nifty 500 companies. When I say stock ranking, what we do is to take these different financial metrics, okay, and then bucket them into whether they are talking about the growth of the company or the quality of the company or the valuations. And then we score the companies on those metrics, right? So if you see, if I say that, Abbott India has a score of 70, it means that on growth, it is, in the top 40% or top 30% of the performers, right? But Avanti Feeds, if you see, is growing much slower. So this is so higher the score, the better it is. Now we have done this for the Nifty 500 companies, and we have split them into financials, which is banking separately, NBFC separately, because the metrics you're going to use there are different, and the non-financials, right? So let's give a little bit of explanation. Let's understand what we are doing in each thing, okay? So what the stock ranking will tell you is, at a single glance, you will know whether it is growing better, is it qualitatively balance sheet stronger, and is it less expensive or more expensive compared to its past than other stocks in that universe. Okay, so in growth, now what are we seeing in growth? When we measure the growth aspect, we are looking at expansion in revenues, expansion in net profits, how much of the operating profits are coming through simple plain cash flows, right? Because that gives really the quality of what profits you're earning. So it's a mix of this. And when we're looking at growth of revenues and profits, we also want to strike a balance between the longer term growth and the recent growth. When I take longer term growth, it will tell me over a period of time how well the company is doing. And you want shorter term growth to kind of see, is it turning around? Is it becoming worse? Okay, so that's a mix of long term metrics and short term metrics when we look at growth. Now, if I tell you, okay, fine, the score for Abbott is 70, then your question is going to be, okay, on what metric is it scoring? Similarly, if Avanti Feeds is 45, on what metric is it losing? So we have given that information. These are some of the metrics that we see. It's not the entire list of metrics. And we weight all of these metrics. So some metrics will have a higher weight, which are more important. Less important metrics will have a lower weight. And that's how we arrive at the score. But this will tell you how, on what metrics the company is actually doing well, and on what metrics it is not that well. So Abbott, if you see, has grown both revenues and PAT very well compared to the rest of the non-financial universe. So the sales growth is strong, the PAT growth is strong. So where you see a green dot, it means it is much better than the category average. And where you see an orange dot, it is, around the category average. Category by mean, I mean this entire non-financial universe. Okay, so Abbott is scoring on sales growth, is scoring on profit growth, both on a longer term basis and on a shorter term basis. But Avanti Feeds is good on the top line, but where it slips is on both margins and on the bottom line. Because if you see the EBITDA margin, latest EBITDA margin is not very strong. It is below the average. The PAT growth, both recent and historical, is also below average, right? So that's why its score is low, but Abbott is high. So this primarily means Abbott is growing faster than most of the other stocks in the universe. Avanti is growing a little slower than the other stocks in the universe. Right? Now let's get to the quality score. Okay. Now in quality is very exhaustive, the metrics that we see. We look at the normal ROE, ROCE and all that. But in addition, we look at metrics like what is the is it cash positive? I mean, is it the cash flow, is it positive, is it growing? In revenues, how much of that revenue is coming from, is locked up in receivables? How quickly is it able to convert its inventory into revenues? Because those are all efficiency, right? So on the quality side, again, Abbott, if you see, scores on across metrics. It's good on debt, it's good on ROE, it's good on turnover, on efficiency, right? So this primarily means both Abbott and Abbott on both growth and quality is scoring well. But in comparison, Avanti, while it is not growing very strongly, is still good on your balance sheet strength. Okay. Now, if I put both of these together, if I have to put these two metrics together, what is it going to tell me? How well the company is growing versus how strong its balance sheet is. So if a balance sheet is strong, then you can now look into where has growth started to slip for Avanti. Why is growth slipping? Can it improve in the coming months or coming years? Right? Is it an industry problem? Is it a cyclical problem? Right? So this scoring, this ranking will tell you how good a company is, and it will also give you direction in which you need to dig further and do your analysis. Now in valuations, what we are seeing is, compared to its history, compared to its historical average PE or PB, how much is the company overvalued or undervalued in context of the rest of the universe? So if you see, Abbott is at 45, which means it's not as expensive as other stocks could be, but it's not really very cheap either. Okay. So when you put these three metrics together, it says Abbott is growing well, it has a strong balance sheet, and it's kind of okay on valuations. So if, say, the PE comes down a little bit, then you could explore it for whether it's worth an investment or not, because it's scoring on the other two metrics. You can even start shortlisting. So you can pick whatever sector you want, or suppose you want only good stocks that are scoring only on quality. Okay, then maybe you can give this filter. Or suppose you want only high growth stocks, so then you give this filter, like show me all growth stocks which are scored 80 and above. But remember, growth can be good, but you also have to pay attention to quality. Okay, so don't ignore one metric in favor of the other metric entirely. So this is one way in which you can shortlist stocks. This is one way in which, if you already own stocks, you can see how good or bad it is. But in this stock ranking, you are taking metrics that we are giving. What we say is, we are saying, look, cash conversion cycle is important. We are saying, look, 3-year average sales growth is important. Now, suppose you have a different set, like you don't believe in cash conversion cycle, let's say. You want to do take your own metrics, do your own analysis. In that case, you can leave this and move to the stock screener tool. Okay. Now in stock screener, what we have done is to take the entire NSE listed universe okay, and given you a bunch of information on it, a bunch of filters, bunch of information on all these stocks. Now, what we are doing with these filters, we are only picking those financial ratios or those financial metrics that are actually useful to analysis, that are actually relevant to analysis. Okay, we are not taking the entire textbook and throwing it at you. We are not confusing with 30, 40, 50, 60 metrics. There's no mix of technical somewhere and then every single ratio that there is in your stock analysis textbook, right? So we are not trying to take everything and giving it to you. What we are doing is to take only those that are useful, those that are important, those that are relevant, and which will actually help you make some sort of meaningful filtering. Okay, because you can take any number of metrics, but they should actually make sense. They should actually be useful. Okay, taking something like the current ratio or quick ratio, which many people do, it doesn't really help in analysis. It's not going to tell you too much. So we are only choosing those metrics which are important. Okay, so let's just see how to approach a stock screener tool. Now, this is simply showing you all the companies possible. Now, you can't possibly look at all these companies, so you need to narrow it down. That is what we said was level 1. You could have either narrowed it down using the stock ranking tool by choosing high growth stocks or high quality stocks. But in this, what you're doing is to narrow it down based on what you want and what you find important. Okay, so very simple narrowing down that you can do is to just go to by market cap. Let's say you want only mid cap stocks, so you put your mid cap filters. Let's say we want between 88,000 crore and say 30,000 crore, right? So that entire universe now just shrinks down to 199, 200 stocks. So this is one kind of filter that you can use. Another filter you can use is if you want low PE stocks or high PE stocks, or low price to book, where price to book is, where price, whether you want low or high. So these are very simple filters that you can use. But suppose you want to dig in a little more, because these are not going to narrow down your list too much. 200 companies is still a lot. You can't possibly sit and look at 200 companies, right? So then you layer on more metrics to this basic set. So what are those metrics that you can use, which is what we have given you. Now in this also we are doing our approach of growth, quality, and valuation that we already discussed. Okay, so under growth, we have just the simple revenues and profits, or you can take, revenue growth, recent revenue growth. You can take, say, operating cash flows, because cash flow is important. Again, latest. Or you can go further back, take a longer term view and look at only 3-year revenue growth. Okay, or 3-year PAT growth. So these are your simple revenue PAT metrics. You can also dig in a little more and go for margins, say. You can go for long-term margins. Okay, or you can get extremely recent and go for the latest. All right. And if you're looking at financial companies, you don't use these metrics. You use a separate set of metrics like the net interest income, the net interest margin, right? So these are metrics that you use for financial companies. The others are metrics that you use for non-financial companies. So let's say I have put these metrics here, right? Now I'm looking at revenue growth. I have 200 companies. Then I decide, I want only companies that are actually growing revenues. I don't want companies where revenues have fallen in the past year. So I'm taking only positive, right? So those 199 companies now come down to 116. Then let me go a little more and say not only does revenue have to grow in this year, it also has to grow in the past 3 years. right? So then I narrow it down some more. So in this manner, by picking what metrics you want to or you think are important and setting criteria here, you can narrow down your list. So that is on the growth aspect. Let's see quality, right? Quality, what we have the normal ROE, ROCE, both current and longer term. Then you have the debt levels, the debt equity ratio, interest cover, all that. In addition, we have other interesting metrics and very useful, very good metrics to look at quality, which is things like how much is it cash positive on an operating cash flow basis, right? How efficient is it in converting inventory into revenues? How well is it paying dividends? Okay, so these are other quality metrics that you can use. Similarly, valuations are, other than the normal price to earnings, price to book, you have things like market cap to sales, which is useful for evaluating loss-making companies. Okay, and then of course you have ownership. Now, suppose you don't want to do all these, don't want to pick your own filters. We have pre-built screeners, which will give you interesting themes, like which stocks mutual funds are increasing stake in, which stocks are seeing steadily rising ROEs, which stocks are seeing PAT increase in the past 4 quarters, right? So these are also interesting ways in which you can shortlist stocks. And not only that, you can take these premium screeners and further filter it down. And to show you how to do this kind of further filtering down, I will ask our equity analyst Chandra Chudamani to show you some ways in which you can use these screeners. All right, Mani, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Bhavana. So, good morning, everyone. So here, as Bhavana said, I will try to explain how we can pick a set of stocks from the screener. So here we have 2091 stocks, NSE listed stocks. So we will do this filtering exercise for 2 categories of stocks. First, we will go with the growth stocks. So what is meant by growth stocks? So here we will take companies that are growing above a certain percentage growth rate. So let us say we are looking at companies growing above 15%. So here we will look at, so we are taking companies that are growing at say 1.5 times or above the nominal GDP growth rate. So let us see how we can run the query and filter out the stocks. And before that, here you can see 2091 stocks. So like Bhavana earlier explained, we can also use the premium screeners to filter it down. So say if we take this steady cash flow positive category, then now this narrows down to 1090 stocks. So here we have all 1090 cash flow positive companies. So now let us see how we can filter out some good growth stocks or companies that are growing above say 15% or so, then meeting the other quality as well as valuation criteria. So let us see how we can do this. So first, here we have this market cap filter. So let me first put it like we are going to look at companies above 1000 crores market cap and up to the largest one, say 15 lakh crores market cap. So let me put that. So we are going to we are not going to look at small caps. So let me add the market cap filter. Now, since we are hunting for growth stocks, first I will go to the growth filter. So here we are going to take 2 parameters. The first one is the revenue growth and the second one is the PAT growth. So here all in all there are a lot of parameters, but all in all we are going to use only 9 or 10 parameters. So from the growth we are going to take 2 parameters. So I have taken 2, revenue growth 3 years CAGR and PAT growth 3 years CAGR. So now let me add the growth rate. So I am adding 15% here. So we are that means we are going to look at stocks that are growing above 15%, revenue growth above 15%. Then in PAT also, again I am adding 15. So here we are going to look at stocks that are growing above 15%, both in revenue and PAT terms. So now let me take the next one, that is the valuation filter. So no, quality filter. Quality is the next thing. So here we are going to take actually 3 parameters. One is the ROE 3-year average, then the ROCE, and the latest debt equity ratio. Okay, so again here we are going to take companies that are having ROCE say above 15% only, because that is a decent ROE to take, and for ROCE also we will take 15%. So the upper band we will leave as such with the filter. Now we have also here taken the latest debt equity ratio. So growing companies, they may take debt, they may not have debt, because companies like in sectors like FMCG or IT, they don't require any debt at all. They are already cash rich. Even automobile companies are cash rich, whereas auto ancillary companies are maybe they will have some debt and all. So I will, since we are going by growth category, I will cap the debt equity ratio at 1 time, because beyond 1 it will signal a bit of higher leverage. So let us go conservative. So I will cap it at 1:1 debt equity ratio. Next I will move to the valuation filter. So valuation, we already have the PE and price to book value. I will take one more dividend yield, and I will also take market cap to sales, because if we don't want to cap stocks at certain valuations, like if we don't want to look at highly expensive stocks, then we can use this. So if we want to get the highly expensive stocks also, then we can remove that, but I will take it here. And so here I am taking 4 parameters. So now let me add the details. So PE, price to earning ratio. So here the lower end is 8, fine, I will keep it as such. In the upper end, I will cap it at say 50. So we are going to look at stocks that are trading below 50 PE only. So let's be conservative. Again, lower end I will keep, and upper end, okay, price to book value. So asset light companies will have higher price to book value. So I will keep it at 15. Then we have taken the dividend yield. Dividend yield, growth companies may not be paying dividend at all, so that is also possible, and they may be not be paying much dividend. So again, 3 was the cap, so I will put it at 5, because growth companies may not be having yield below above 3%, so that is why. Then the market cap to sales ratio, here also yeah, the maximum I intend to put is 10 times, so fine. That is it. So what we have arrived at is, we have actually arrived at 19 companies that are meeting this growth, then quality, as well as the valuation criteria that we have given. So again, we can actually see here what all criteria that we have given. But 19 is too little, because you will not be seeing these IT stocks or all these things here. So the reason is actually with the growth, because 2021 or we had actually a flat 2020 for many of the companies, and 2021 also there was disruption. So here we are taking actually 3-year CAGR. So because of the disruption, because of the special event like COVID and all, the 3-year CAGR may not be the 15% or more than 15% as we have put in here, because of this special event or issue, or this black swan event. But otherwise, this 15% CAGR or 15%, at least 15% revenue or the PAT growth rate is the metric to go. So here, due to this issue, I will lower it. So I will lower it to 5%, as well as the PAT growth, I will lower it to 5%. So what is happening is that here I am actually getting a list of, you can see the IT companies on top. Here actually I am getting a list of 65 stocks that are meeting the growth, quality and valuation filters we have chosen here. So what are those? You can see all those filters here, whether it is the price to earnings ratio, price to book value ratio, the operating cash flows, the revenue growth CAGR, PAT growth CAGR, all the metrics you can actually see here. So that's it. So we are actually done with how to filter out the growth stocks from 1,000 odd stocks we arrived at, which are cash flow positive companies, steady cash flow positive companies. Now you can actually export this to Excel for further screening, because this actually gives a preliminary list of some good quality companies to dig further on other aspects. Then you can also save this screener. So like you can save this as growth and save. So what will happen is that you can go to your saved screens and retrieve it, say growth. So now the another interesting aspect about this is that you can retrieve it at any point of time, and at any point of time whatever companies that are meeting this criteria will actually come up in this screener. So maybe at a later point of time, if you run it, there may be 60 stocks only, or there may be even 70 stocks. So this is how we can actually do this exercise for growth stocks. So I am done with growth stocks. Again, I will also move to the next category, which is the value stocks. Okay. So we are just done with the growth category. So I will also show how to run this same screener for value category. Again, so we are back to our original list, or back to what we were the original screener thing. Like here we have again 2091 stocks. So now let us see how we can extract some value stocks out of this list. So before that, let me just try to give some explanation on the difference between the growth and value. So when we say value stocks, these are actually low growth stocks basically. So in the sense they may be growing at the same nominal GDP rate, say some 10% or 11%, or they may be growing lower than that, but they will be actually paying very high dividends. They compensate for the growth in the form of dividends, and the expected return from value stocks will at any point will be lower than that of growth stocks. So when growth stocks provide more with capital appreciation, value stocks will provide with higher dividends actually. So that is the difference. So again, how stocks become growth and value. So let me take two examples to explain that also. So let me take the case of a stock called Sun TV. So you will all be familiar with that. So ever since 2008, for the last 13 years, the stock has done nothing, almost at the same price. So if we, but it is also a high ROE, the company with good financial metrics or high return on equity and all, they are also paying handsome dividends, but still it has done nothing. So if we look at the net earnings growth or the PAT growth, we can see in the last 10 years, it has grown from just 770 crores or so to just 13, nearly 1400 crores. But then again, there is some other income due to excess cash. So if we exclude that, it is from 770 to 1100. So hardly 1.5 times growth in 10 years. So, or literally the growth is not there. So this is what happened to the earnings of this company, and it has actually, the stock price has not done anything despite paying dividend. But what happens? But let me take another example here. It is so this Sun TV has almost stayed like a permanent value stock for quite a long time. So now let us take another case. Let me take another company, which is MRF. So this company, maybe its ROE is a bit lower than Sun. Its ROE is at 19%. But the interesting aspect about this company is that in the last 10 years, this company has generated over 15,000 crores in operating cash flow. Okay, so out of the 15,000 crores it has generated, it has reinvested 12,500 crores in the business again. So in what? In the same business. It has paid just 250 crores, only 250 crores, because the stock is known for paying very paltry dividends. So it has only paid 250 crores as dividend all these years, but it has reinvested 12,500 crores. So when a company reinvests its profits, what is going to happen? This reinvestment is again going to generate a return that is equal to its ROE, that is 19%. So in the case of a value stocks, if they accumulate the cash, it will hardly earn any 6 or 7% interest. But here the company is investing back in business and it is earning 19%. So that is again pushing the growth. And again, this stock is also like some, it is like the Unilever or the Asian Paints, it has also given some 13 times returns in the last 10 years. So here what happened is that the profit has moved up 4 times, actually more than 4 times. So this is how stocks become growth and value, because if companies don't have reinvestment opportunities and pay majority of the portion as dividend, then the growth will be very low. And if companies have significant growth opportunity, and if they even don't pay any dividends, if they are able to reinvest in their own business at higher ROE, then they will turn out to be significant growth companies. Again, there is so now let me move to actually the screener, and let me explain how we can run this query for value stocks and query to find out value stocks. So again, let me go to the premium screen and let me narrow down the list to 90 stocks by using this steady cash flow positive. So we are again taking the steady cash flow positive companies here to run the screener. So I think I'm audible and you're able to follow up me. Hello?
Yes, Mani, you're audible. No problem.
So now let me run the filters for value stocks. And first again, I will just take this market cap limit from 1,000 crores to say the upper end 15 lakh crores. So now, as we did it for growth stocks, I will again pick the parameters. First is the growth itself. So I am again taking the 3-year revenue growth and 3-year PAT growth CAGR. So here, as we explained earlier, they are actually growing at a lower rate. So we have to take lower rate for this company. So let me take something at 10% to, or let me take it at 5%. 5% to say, okay, let upper end. So let it be 25% at the upper end. And now let me take the PAT growth. So that also let me take 5 at the lower end and 25% at the upper end. Here we are actually taking low growth companies. So likewise, we have taken 5% at the lower end. Next, we will take the quality filters. Again, ROE, 3-year average ROE, because just because stocks are not growing or just because value stocks, that doesn't mean they should be low on quality also. They should be high ROE, high cash flow companies. They can be. So let us take ROE, ROC, and the latest debt equity ratio, these 3 parameters. So now I will add those filters. ROE. Here also we will keep 15% as the lower rate, because that is because then only we are able to make any money. So let us keep it 15% here also. ROE and ROC, then the debt equity ratio. Debt equity ratio here actually companies will be debt free, but then some companies may have some kind of debt because due to some accounting things, or otherwise generally these value stocks don't require much of debt actually to grow. So let me take it 0.5. In the case of growth, we took one because they may be investing for growth. So here we will take it 0.5. That is more than enough. And then we will actually move to valuation filters. Again, price to earnings ratio, price to book value ratio, dividend yield is very important here, and these three are actually enough. So let me put price to equity ratio. Lower end 8.3 is okay. Higher end, let us put at somewhere around 25, because for growth we have taken it up to 50. Here this okay, fine, 1 to 10, that is also fine. So we will take, and then dividend, it is very important. Dividend yield, because these stocks will be known for paying high dividends. So in growth, what we have seen is that 3 was the cap, 3 was the highest dividend paid by a growth, 3% was the highest yield from a growth stock. We have just seen that. So now let us take that as the base. So value stocks, we are expecting at least 3% yield. So on the higher end, we can put 10% if they are paying any special dividend also, we can take that. So what has happened here is that we just got 4 stocks out of this list of 1,000 stocks. Again, there is this problem with the growth, because we have gone through 2 years that were not good. 1 year that was flat and 1 year that is not good. So again, growth stocks, value stocks, or the stocks that are growing at lower rate can also take a hit here on their growth. So the numbers can even go negative. So I will just modify it to -5 on the revenue growth, and I will also modify it to -5 on the PAT growth side. So what I have got here is a list of 12 stocks, and these are the stocks that based on the parameters we have given, these are the stocks we are getting as value stocks actually. So we can actually see all the parameters here, whatever we have put, they are cash flow positive for 2 years, then revenue. Say Hindustan Zinc, it is negative growth here, so that is why it initially didn't come. So here you can see all these stocks, the growth rate is mostly in single digits, and for some, due to this corporate tax cut in FY20, they got some push in profit growth, PAT growth. So that is why they are at least showing some double-digit growth. Otherwise, these were actually growing at a very low rate, and you can see debt equity, there is nothing, but the dividend yield, you can see they are actually, all these companies are actually paying out decent dividends also. So again, maybe we can lower it to, yeah, this is fine. So this is how we can filter out value stocks from this. This value stocks also does not mean that the stocks can stay permanently. So again, here we can try with the -10% also. So the list even expands. Now you can see Petronet LNG has come. So now you have 14 stocks actually. So Hero Honda has come. So what has happened here is that revenue growth, PAT growth was -7%. So because of the COVID related issues and all, that is, otherwise it was a very well growing company. So because of one-off event, we had to lower the range. Otherwise, it is fine that you put 15% at the lower end for growth stocks and say 5% at the lower end for value stocks for both revenue as well as PAT. That is quite okay. So this is how we can actually arrive at value stocks using this screener. Now, this value stocks, actually they need not remain value for quite a long time, because once the growth picks up, because there are many options, there may be many options for them to grow also. So if they decide to reinvest in business rather than paying out dividends, then they can also turn out to be growth stocks. But then like in the beginning we explained the case of MRF, it was investing in the same business at the same 19% ROE. But in the case of companies that are diversifying, there can be a problem where they are diversifying into new lines of businesses that may not yield desired results. So again, the companies will remain value for quite a long time. So it is something that has happened with ITC. It has invested in new line of business that is not generating that kind of ROE which the cigarette business used to be. So that is the case. But once, what happens when the new line of business or the FMCG or whatever it is it has invested starts to make more money, then again the ROE can pick up, and so the earnings or the PAT growth can again pick up, and it can very well move from a value stock to a growth stock again, but it is contingent on how the areas where it is pumping money are going to perform. So that is it. So again, here also you can actually export the entire data to Excel for use in future. You can go deep into these companies. Then you can also save this query. So you can save it as value, and you can retrieve it at any point of time. And here another interesting usage with this query is that whenever there is a sharp fall in market, you will see this list expanding, because from 14 it may get to 20 or 25 or 30 even, because of the sudden fall, some of the stocks that are in growth category may also come into this. So you will actually get a lot of bargains, because if I have to say an example, then I think Infosys was one stock that was actually there in this query when the market fell in March. And so likewise, you will actually, it is quite possible that you will get some additional 15 or 20 stocks here when there is a sudden fall in market. At that point of view, you just need to go and run this query. That's all. Just need to click the saved screen and just run this value query, and then whatever stocks that meet the criteria at that point of time will come in here. So this is how actually you can use our screener to filter out both growth as well as value stocks. So
Thanks,
now
Mani.
yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Yes, Mani, I'll take over. Hello, everybody. So Mani was just trying to give you a sample of, the kind of filters that you can run to achieve at an end goal that you wish to go. So while I was, hearing all this, I, saw quite a few questions from many of you on, one, can we not have an overall ranking? We have growth, value, and quality ranking. Can we not have an overall ranking? And there were people who are asking, how about in screeners having other exceptional items also filtered out, etc., and so on. So the first thing that we all need to remember, because many of you who have used our service would be used to our mutual fund ratings, our mutual fund review tool, and so on. A very important thing to note here is that stock screening is nowhere near the same as a mutual fund screening and a mutual fund recommendation. The reason being, in mutual funds, you may have an overall requirement, right? See, end of the day, in mutual funds, please remember, you have left the job of choosing the right investments for you to the fund manager. All that we are doing now is sitting and assessing whether the fund manager is doing the right job, right? And that's very easily done through a set of quantitative metrics on top of a few qualitative metrics. But with stocks, that's not the case, right? We are using here a whole lot of quantitative metrics. Yes, we might be able to tweak and use here and there qualitative metrics, like we have the pledging shares, we have where mutual funds are increasing, where FIIs are increasing, and so on. But it is nowhere near understanding a company. Forget understanding a company. It's even nowhere near using the right metrics for the right companies, right? Your filters actually do not do that. So it's very important to recognize the limitations of a filter. To reduce the limitations of a filter, what we have tried to do is give you only relevant metrics. So if you go to many of the popular screening tools that you may have seen outside, our competitor tools, you will have a whole gamut of metrics, starting from your liquidity ratio and current ratio and data turnover and creditors turnover and so on. We have tried to condense them. For instance, we have used cash conversion cycle. We have tried to avoid some of them where we think they may not make much relevance when you're screening a whole lot of data. They will make relevance when you're getting into specific companies, right? So the point that I'm trying to make here is many quantitative aspects can be specific to sectors, even specific to companies, unlike mutual funds, right? So in mutual funds, you can apply a Sharpe ratio, you can apply an information ratio or a capture ratio across funds and see how they perform. This is not going to happen with stocks. So for those of you new to stocks who believe screener is the way to get that one stock that you need, It's not going to happen. So please be aware. I mean, there are hundreds of YouTube videos that will tell you how to screen stocks under 1 minute and come up with, your favored stock. That's not the case. You can never invest in a stock without knowing what's specific to it, right? So I'm just going to try and, address some of the issues, the challenges that you will have while using a filter and how you can overcome them and how you can fine tune your shortlist. So Mani or Bhavna spoke about arriving at the shortlist, how you can fine tune your shortlist by looking at metrics which are more relevant to those companies or those, sectors. So let me just get in. Right. So when you do screeners, what the screener is doing for you is making comparison across, companies, and it's doing comparison across time because you're having year-on-year growth, you're having trailing growth, or we have some data on, a quarter, this quarter versus a year ago growth, and so on. And then you're having, some sort of, sometimes you might just prefer a certain industry alone. So you're benchmarking this fund against only its industry. Your screener allows you to do that, right? Whereas with our ranking, we actually benchmark each fund in relation to other funds, right? So these are the ways in which you do a screener. But before you do that, it's very hard to just get into a screener. You don't have to imagine what your output will be, but it's very important to have some kind of a goal, and that goal should be based on your need. For example, if you decide you only want to look at mid-cap stocks, your screener should begin with having a market cap, filter right away, right? If you decide you are going to go for growth stocks, like Mani had already run growth stocks for you, naturally the range that you give for your revenue or for your PAT growth will be higher. So some of you asked us the question, what is the sanctity between using ranges? Is there any thumb rule? No, there can be no thumb rule, but we can fine tune it. We'll come to that. But you need to be more aggressive when you are looking at certain kinds of stocks, right? So because, for example, you're looking at smaller companies or mid-sized companies, you do expect them to grow high. You don't want a very stable, sedate, small mid-cap company, right? What's the point? You can't expect a very tiny company to behave like ITC or HUL. Then where are you going to get the returns from? Because a tiny company cannot give you dividend like ITC or a HUL. So where is the returns going to come from? It's going to come from the earnings growth, right? So unless that earnings growth is aggressive, you're not going to achieve the returns, right? So your returns per se, you should understand, can be twofold. Returns comes from the actual stock price rise, right? And other returns also comes from the steady dividends that some companies give, right? So these two put together make your returns, but you have to be very clear what sort you prefer, right? Somebody going with a HUL doesn't expect a 30%, 40%, CAGR of profit growth or sales growth. Nobody should expect it also, nor with, a company like TCS or Infosys. Instead, you do look at some sort of steady growth at the lower end and see if their ability to pay dividends is also good, right? So, and therefore you should have an end goal. If you want more sedate companies with higher dividend payouts, then the kind of value filters that Mani used would make more sense. And the reason why he used a lower cutoff for growth is value because it's not growing high, right? So you are not going to have a value company growing at 50-60%, in which case it will no longer be value because likely the market would have factored it in. There is some anomaly there, and therefore its growth is lower than what you imagine. So you should keep these in mind when you put your filters. That's a large point. So I've just bucketed 5 kinds here, but you can have any kind of other goal. So you should be clear about it, right? If you're not clear about it, then it's very hard for you to put your filters, like giving the ranges for PAT, giving the ranges for debt equity. For example, in debt equity, if you're simply looking at capital goods or infrastructure companies, you should give leeway. You can't say my debt equity should necessarily be less than 0.25. 0 to 0.25. It's very hard. Many capital goods companies by their very nature are quite leveraged, and therefore you will find them having slightly higher debt equity, right? So it becomes very important to know what you're going behind. Should I necessarily know every bit of sector? No. That's why when we ran these filters, the first growth filters, we got slightly larger number of companies. So if you try to narrow down too much without a goal, especially, you may not know what you're going behind. So if you have a larger universe, then you look at the universe, then you can decide what exactly you want. But unlike mutual funds, the filters, the metrics that you use can vary depending on the nature of companies, the maturity of companies, and the sector. So doing the filter, without any goal may be difficult. Like I said, I already mentioned the range matters. If, for example, if you're trying to look at companies that are turning around, right? So a company is moving from, losses to profits, right? If you try to see its 3-year CAGR, probably the company was doing quite badly, and its 3-year CAGR may be quite bad, but you would see that year-on-year growth or that quarter-on-quarter growth suddenly coming up in 3-digit numbers, right? That can give you cue on whether there has actually been a turnaround there. Now, again, you have to be careful. That turnaround might be exceptional. So you will have to look, at a few more quarters, which you will do later when you actually look at the analysis of the company. But if you give a longer period, you see negative growth. I mean, there is no growth, etc. You might actually end up missing an opportunity otherwise. So what you want, again, will matter here. Like I already said, value companies, you can't be giving a very high, revenue growth or a very high PAT growth and expect value to come out of it, right? And what range you give? Somebody asked, one of you asked us this question, revenue, what is it? Why do you have to give 15% or why do you have to give? So typically with sales, you expect any company in the economy to perform at least as well as the economic growth or better, right? And that is reflected in the sales, the revenue, right? So if you take the nominal GDP, I'm not talking the real GDP. The real GDP is adjusted for inflation, right? It's much lower. The nominal GDP for India, which is the real GDP plus the inflation, typically can be anywhere between 11% to 15% and so on. And that is why you are trying to you are hoping that this company that I am going to pick should at least be at par with the economic growth. It can't be lower than what the economy is growing at. It's very fair. You take any company, it doesn't matter whether it's a service sector or whether it's in banking or it is in manufacturing. It should keep pace with the economy, otherwise it's an underperformer, right? So these kind of commonsensical approach is what you can take to give your ranges. Similarly, if you're not very clear, you can actually download even the entire 2000 odd companies that are there and try to see what's the average earnings growth for this universe, right? And you might want to say, I want an earnings growth which is higher than this average universe, right? So basically you're going to eliminate everything which is below average. So those kind of approaches. So you don't necessarily need to know what exactly has been the past growth of this company, because it's not possible in a filter. You're not going to be able to do that. So taking a broader macro approach or a simple data-based approach is something that can work for you. Now coming to, metrics. When we look at metrics, it's very important to understand, one, what metrics are most relevant and what metrics are also comparable, right? If you take revenue growth, PAT growth, these are very simple, right? They are relevant. They can be compared across. However, what you will miss in many of the screeners that you see outside is sales will be your bank. For your bank, you should have considered your what is called as net interest income. That is, bank makes money by charging you interest, and there is a cost attached to it. That is, they borrow money through deposits, through bonds, etc. They pay a price for it. Net of this is actually their income. So with banks, just taking the top line sales really doesn't make sense. There is something called net interest income, and in our screener you would have noticed that when Bhavna showed you, she showed there are metrics that you should take for banks, right? So therefore you can't be comparing banking stocks along with these and take sales or take operating profit margins. It doesn't work. For bank, the operating profit margin is not really important. It is this net interest income which is important. And then you can look at the end of the day, the profit growth. Profit growth is universal. You can check for any company. But there again, holding companies, if you have companies with lot of holding structures like a Piramal Enterprises or a Bajaj Holdings and so on, none of these matter really. So if your shortlist is going to have holding companies, please know you have not arrived at it very scientifically. Keep them aside. Keep them aside and see. If you're new, don't even touch holding companies because it's very hard to understand them, because you need to know every business inside this holding company to actually invest in the holding company. So keep it aside, because many of these may not be relevant for a holding company. Even at a consolidated level, although I've put relevant, important to note that all that is coming from those multiple companies inside this holding company. Like what is coming from Bajaj Auto and Bajaj Finserv will determine what really is the consolidated numbers for Bajaj Holdings. And these are again two different sectors. I'm talking of an auto here and financial services here, right? So you understand what I'm saying. So keep that apart. These are things where you will need help. We will come out with recommendations. If we have good holding companies, they'll be out on our list, so don't worry about it. But if you're more in the learning mode, look at simple manufacturing services, look at bank and NBFCs separately. Know that operating profit margins for bank won't matter. Because the way their accounting is structured is very different from the way manufacturing accounting is structured. A little bit of accounting knowledge will help here. And to make a start, you can actually go and look at a few annual reports of companies. You will see how manufacturing companies are very different from banking reporting, right? So similarly, ROE, right? ROE is very relevant. It is end of the day a return ratio. So as an investor, what I get out of it is very important. So across, it will make sense for you. ROCE makes more sense if a company is quite debt laden. So although your shortlist may have thrown companies with very high ROCE, for example, Infosys or HUL may have very high ROCE because they simply hardly have any capital borrowed. So their denominator is not going to be higher. ROCE basically is the invested capital, the return on your invested capital, which includes both debt and equity. So there you might actually not come up with something very different if you're not high on debt, right? So when you have already done your shortlist, you need to know these aspects of a company. Am I looking at cash-rich companies? Then I'll discount ROCE. It doesn't matter. I shouldn't really focus on it. So that should, kind of be your approach. Similarly, efficiency and liquidity ratios, where companies are high on cash, constantly churning, a lot of cash. They don't have much credit cycle, or they don't have long cycle of receivables, etc. Some of these liquidity and efficiency ratios may not be too relevant. In manufacturing, it's mostly relevant because manufacturing is a highly, credit-oriented, working capital-oriented business. Not all manufacturing, for example, your turnaround may be much faster in a FMCG than it is with a power equipment company, right? So a BHEL may have very high receivable cycles, and it may also, it's being big, it may also pay its vendors quite late. Right? Similarly, an auto, if you take automobile, maybe their receivable cycles may not be too high, but their payable cycles will be quite high. Why? Because Tata Motors or an Ashok Leyland can really squeeze vendors, right? So they are going to take time to pay the vendors. So your working capital turnover will therefore be very different from for an FMCG compared with a auto company or a power equipment company. So it's important for you to understand. But yes, you can still, you can't have very high working capital, turnover, even within, power equipment. So you can relatively see if it does seem very high, it's not doing well. It's not, it's not quite efficient in its using its, short-term capital. Similarly, the same thing applies, wherever companies are cash rich, many of these liquidity ratios may be less relevant. Whereas if companies are more prone to longer periods of payments and receivables, they become more relevant. And then leverage, right? So debt to equity is very important, like all of you know. Is there a range to debt to equity? Like I said earlier, really there isn't a range. Textbook wise, if I'm going to do my RA exam to qualify to sit here, it might probably say the best you can go to is 2:1. But what's the sanctity of 2:1? There is no sanctity to it, right? It is always about utilizing the capital well, how well you are able to leverage on the capital that is given to generate the return. So if my ROC is really healthy, right? When I say ROC, it also includes the debt capital. then it is not a harm to have a slightly higher debt equity ratio, right? I mean, you will see companies like, let me just, share a sheet here so that it's clear. Right, companies like I've given an example here of L&T and Infosys. You can see debt equity of L&T is at 2.13. Infosys is like literally zero, especially if you take long-term debt, like literally zero, right? So why is this of importance to me? Because when I compare L&T and Infosys and I eliminate L&T thinking it's 2.13, whereas Infosys is zero and therefore I'll take zero. No, because L&T is in a sector where it needs that kind of funding because its projects are of that length. Infosys is simply going to use many of us as manpower, many of you sitting here as manpower and, generate. But L&T needs to borrow to buy those equipments, to buy, those whatever that it makes. And therefore, there is a lot of capital intensity there. So it borrows. The question is whether it's able to deliver for that borrowing, right? So debt equity will be relevant, but you need to understand that there is a range. A small company with a very high debt to equity, you need to be careful, right? Because it may not be able to pay back because its revenues. My large company like L&T with several thousand crores of rupees, its strength is much more, right? So when after you shortlist, these are things you need to be aware of. L&T, what credit rating does it enjoy out in the market, right? So if there is 2.13, then bad. If you're still enjoying AA plus, something must be right? You are still having a good credit standing and so on. Similarly, when it comes to interest cover, if you think a company's interest cover is at 100, wow, it is superb. It may be because the company hasn't borrowed at all, right? So it doesn't matter, right? Or it has very little borrowing. So the ability of your profits to cover the interest will again matter only if there is real borrowing in the books, right? If your debt equity is high, then you need to also look at interest cover, whether it's servicing its debt properly. Then we come to, these I was talking of are all the P&L and balance sheet items. So far, the growth and margins largely come under your P&L, your efficiency and your return ratios, all of these, I've just taken examples. So please remember, it's not like these are the only ratios. There are plenty of ratios. It's just I've taken those that you may more commonly use and where, the relevance is not there across, I've tried to pick them. So your return ratios, efficiency will come as part of mostly your balance sheet. And, your financial leverage comes as part of your P&L and your balance sheet. And finally, the valuation. Valuation is something that, around I'm just thinking maybe around 16, 17 years ago, right after my CA, when, we weren't even told, I mean, theoretically, we read about price earnings, price to book, etc. But nobody really told us. Trust me, the CA course doesn't tell you where to apply what, right? So most of us are not aware of where the, the relevance of certain valuation in certain businesses. For example, banking, right? In banking, what do I leverage on? I leverage on the loan book. As a bank, I need to have a healthy loan book, and I am assessed by the size of my loan book, right? And that's where this price to book, the value of its assets, come into play. What's an asset for a bank? It's the loans, right? So that's where it comes into play. So for a bank, earnings is automatic provided if this book is healthy. If this book is healthy, by that I mean if the loan size is good and the NPAs are not high. If none of these are great, then the next step of even generating those earnings doesn't arise, right? So I am assessed as a bank by the quality of my book, right? That's where price to book really matters, as opposed to a manufacturing company where I leverage multiple times on my asset. So I have an asset, I have a machinery, I keep generating earnings out of it. I depreciate it and so on. It doesn't matter. My earnings only goes up. Just because I depreciate doesn't mean my earnings comes down, etc. So for a manufacturing company, typically price earnings is used, provided there is an earnings, there is an E. What if you didn't have profit at all, right? That's when these other metrics, like EV/EBITDA comes into play, wherein at an operating level, at least, are you making money? Okay, you are not profitable, it doesn't matter, because you've just come into this business. For example, all the new age businesses, fintech place, or your e-commerce businesses, there is no profits, right? So how would you assess them? So you either go by EV, by EBITDA, or they are high growth companies, like a company like Zoom that one would use for all these meetings. Its sales are so high. So those kind of companies, your MCAP, where a company is in a very high growth stage, but it may not be making profits yet, MCAP to sales comes into play, right? So similarly, not just in banks, a company with very high assets, for example, a GMR Infra or a GVK, which has lot of road or airport assets, right? Price to book matters. Why? Because those assets are the building blocks for it. It is in its balance sheet. It's not just building roads and giving it to somebody, but it's holding and maintaining them, right? So asset heavy companies, price to book will matter. So you can kind of see where certain metrics will matter when you do the final stage. Again, I'm not talking of the top level. The top level, you are only giving ranges, and many good companies will fall within your range, so you don't have to worry. But when you start looking at the next level, this is something you should be aware of, right? And there may be, when it comes to the ranges, there may be companies in banks. If you take today, it is not uncommon for you to find many banks with price to book of just 1 or under 1. We have had times when State Bank had hit that, right? SBI. When that happens, it does not immediately mean that this is a great value pick. Many may remain at that for a very long time. Many of the PSU banks have remained so. That is so because their quality of book is so bad that the market is not willing to give any valuation to those. So, like Mani said, sometimes companies remaining in value zone for very long can be value traps, right? So a low PE, for example, I'm just going to go to our stock ranking just to kind of see what happens if I take high score. So in all of the rankings, a higher score means it's better in that metric, right? So I'm going to look at the kind of companies. For example, GMR Infra has a very high valuation score. What does it mean? It basically means that GMR is trading very cheap, right? But look at it in conjunction with these. Your quality is quite bad. Its ROE is very low. Its interest cover, which is very serious, is quite bad. It is in a red zone. And you will see, it's okay, doing okay on debt equity. It's okay on cash conversion and so on. Its asset turnover is not good. Asset turnover is very important for an infrastructure company. It's not doing too well. If you take, growth, look at the growth metrics. It's actually managing reasonable PAT, but not great sales, right? Which means the core business, it's probably not giving it much revenue, and there's some other income from somewhere, which is, kind of helping it. So its score is okay. It's not terrible, but its balance sheet quality is so bad. It is not even 50, right? So this is important for you to know that in valuation, cheap hardly means great. So the moment something is cheap, what you need to check at is its quality score. It's a very simple way for you to do. Is this doing well on quality, right? That's a very, very, because if something is cheap and it's great, please remember there are thousands and millions of people like us who have already recognized it, and probably it will no longer remain in the cheap zone. So that's the most very commonsensical argument that you should place for yourself when you think there is great value in a company. Why is it that others have not discovered it? When a company is trading at low PE, why is it that others have not discovered it? Is it a temporary thing, right? So what has happened? Was it hit by a regulatory issue, or was it just the sector? For example, commodity, right? Commodities are going to be hit by, poor performance in cycles. So you will see a commodity company actually having very high PE the moment the cycle picks up. That doesn't mean a commodity company is bad, right? So I'll come to that point. I'll come to, comparing companies across their own cycles and across sectors. So this, just to recap, these are some of the ratios for every single ratio. Like you would have seen me narrating, it takes a lot of work to understand whether it's relevant to the sector and whether am I comparing it with the right set of companies, etc. Right? Now, comparing across companies' own cycles, normally some companies can go through seasonalities. Like a paint company would typically see higher growth, in during the festive season, which is over the Navratri and the Diwali for us. So you can ease out these kind of sudden jumps by typically using year-on-year comparisons. Similarly, with commodities, don't please think that a commodity is very expensively valued or very low compared with what it was few months ago. It's important to see how this commodity behaves in every upcycle. Probably every time a commodity upcycle happens, this is the PE to which it goes. So is it trading at those PE or is it at higher PE? So that comparison becomes very important, right? And comparing across sector, like I said, use common metrics. Like don't use an operating profit margin, regular revenue, and try to come up with a bank. Filter banks separately. Don't use it with others. Similarly with NBFCs, you will see in our ranking system that NBFCs and banks have been given separate. You can't even put them together because we don't want you to see it together. With Screener, we have left it to you because Screener is a tool that you want to try, but with ranking, we are coming up with some outcome. So we want to keep them separate. So you will see NBFCs, banks. By the way, none of the other screening tools really do this because it's very painful to collect or collate data for banks or NBFCs because many of the data providers don't provide it. So please be aware that you're having rich data here in that sense. So compare across common metrics, know what to expect in each sector, right? Let me just go back to this Excel sheet on Infosys and on, L&T, right? Look at the kind of operating profit margin that Infosys generates and what L&T generates. What L&T generates is actually quite good for its sector, but look at the averages. In any case, I've taken a longer period and you will see that it's not, L&T is nowhere near Infosys, right? Does that make L&T a bad company? The question you have to ask yourself is L&T suitably discounted in its price because this is all that it is able to make? Look at its ROE, right? 25% Infosys and 16-17%, L&T. So does it make L&T in your shortlist a bad company? Not necessary, because L&T, for example, look at the sales growth. It's actually managed 11% sales in the last 3 years as opposed to Infosys 12%. It's a different matter that Infosys was going through a slightly difficult phase. But for a cyclical company like L&T, this is good, right? And profit growth, amazingly, L&T has actually managed better growth, right? So what you need to understand here is this is a volume-driven company, a growth-driven company. It may not show margins, but as long as it's able to generate those top-line growth and it is at a suitable discount to these players, right? The suitable discount is not something that I can just define right away. You will probably need to, kind of do a DCF of companies to understand and all that. But what you need to know here is my ROE of L&T is lower than Infosys, right? And therefore, the market is never going to value L&T at Infosys level, right? So when you look at L&T, look at L&T with its own self. So L&T is nowhere lesser, but is L&T trading at a premium? L&T seems good on many of these metrics, but is it trading at a premium to its own self? Is it higher than what it was in its earlier period of growth in earnings, right? So this is how we have to see rather than looking at Infosys and L&T and right away trying to eliminate L&T. By the way, I'm not suggesting that L&T is a buy here. All I'm suggesting is that you should know after your shortlist is done how to go about looking at them, right? I already spoke about the valuation metrics, so I'll kind of not repeat that, but this is very, very, very important, and I will emphasize it once again, because which valuation metrics you use, what range you look at. One is looking in line with its industry and with its own self and with others. There's no harm looking at a company's PE with others. Somebody was asking me whether, why not use PEG? You can use PEG, provided you have an estimate of the growth of the company, right? You should know, for example, I'm paying 25 times for this company. Do I expect the earnings to grow by, in a very simplistic way, by 25% every year over the next 5 years or so? Most of the times it won't, right? If so, for example, there are FMCG companies trading at 50 times, 45, 50, 55 times. Do you expect their earnings to grow at that pace? No, right? Why? because the premium is being given to the quality of those companies, the cash rich nature of those companies, the low debt equity of the companies, the non-cyclical business of those companies, and not so much about whether it's able to grow at this rate, right? So there are a lot of qualitative premium that the market is willing to give to certain stocks for more predictability. It could be predictability in growth, it could be predictability in management, it could be predictability in dividend payouts, and so on. Now, that is not something you can easily quantify. So that's something that you should be aware of when you look at PEs and say something is cheap. So in those cases, you'd rather see it with the own company's high PE and when it was, how much below, is it below its highest PE, is it for a reason, is it because its earnings has slowed, and so on, rather than simply look at a low PE stock as a high PE stock, right? It applies for every one of the metrics that I'm talking of. Price to book in banks, very, very important. A bank that was at 3-4 times price to book is at 1 time now. You definitely need to question if something is wrong. A PSU that is at trading at very low PE, you definitely need to question whether there is going to be growth at all in that story, right? So these are the things that you need to question yourself when after you do your shortlist. Last but not the least, calculation of ratios, calculation of metrics can be done in manifold ways. Okay, if you or any of your finance students are interested in finance, you go check out many of the videos by Professor Ashwath Damodar, and you will know, even for something like calculating the debt to equity ratio, the total debt, are you including long-term debt? Are you including only short-term debt? Have you removed some of the temporary money that you would have, taken, maybe loans, etc.? So even the numerator is subject to so many questions, and then there's the denominator, which is the equity, which is the shareholders' funds. That shareholders' funds, what reserves are you eliminating? Are you only keeping free reserves? Have you eliminated every other reserve that is specific to a specific purpose, like statutory reserve or something like that? It will change the debt equity ratio, right? Similarly, even if you take things like PAT, are you taking reported profit after tax? Are you taking adjusted profit after tax? Will change the way even what you look at as your profit margins, right? Or for that matter, even your PE. Now, one simple thing here you should remember is that with PAT, whether adjustments need to be done, exceptional items, you need to recognize that something that is totally not a part of the business is where adjustment needs to be done. Many companies do this cooking up. Okay, so many of them will take the profits, a big hit to profits, which is very much part of the business, but will say it is one time. It doesn't matter, it's one time, right? It's still part of the business. You've taken a hit, that's something pertaining to your business. It is to be considered, right? But if it's not part of your business, it's from an investment that you made and the loss that you incurred on some shares that you held, those can be exceptional, right? So how you define exceptional and extraordinary can make a lot of difference, right? So you can always be conservative in it. There's no harm. Like you would have seen Bharti Airtel, Vodafone took hits, right? But those are hits. Those may be one time, but they are still hits. So we cannot simply discount saying, that didn't occur. It was a business risk and the business risk transpired. So very important to recognize every single analyst or a brokerage report that you may say may take a different numbers. Many a time they may take numbers which may suit their thesis also, right? So it's very important. I'm not saying what is wrong or what is right, but when you take something, be consistent, right? Because at least your comparisons, your relative comparisons will then be consistent. Don't follow A for X company and B for Y company and so on. Just follow the same across. And that's what we have tried to do in our own. I'm not saying our filters will be completely foolproof. We have tried to, make it as comparable and consistent as possible. That's all that we have tried to do. So these are some of the tips. This is a never-ending topic, folks. There are so many things that we can talk to you about how to further go about analyzing companies once you do this broad-based filter. Trust me, increasingly many fund managers use these kind of filters to arrive at a more manageable shortlist because they are reducing the manpower. They're not going to have 10 analysts, tracking 12 sectors and so on. So filters do play a role in very key decisions, but once you have done with the filters and you get into companies, it's important to understand the maturity of the company, the sector in it or industry in which it is, and broadly those, these two will play a large role. And what you want, very importantly, what is your objective? Do you want a high growth? Do you want a value, and so on? So these are factors that you need to keep in mind. We'll probably over the course of several months, several years, cover many of these topics. So please be tuned. And one very important thing before I move to some questions is that our ranking tool is actually part of our subscriber only product, but we are opening up a ranking tool today. For if you're a trial subscriber, please make use of it. It will be available till the end of this month. You might want to use a ranking tool if you're a very novice investor, you're new to investing. It will give you a good idea, but please do not pick stocks simply based on ranking or screener. That's not done. Nobody does it. And one of you asked us about moving to a recommendation. Yes, we do use all these filters, but sometimes we do give stocks even those that may not come in our filters because we think there are prospects and they are depressed in the score for a reason. That happens with screeners all the time. So please be aware of it. So with that, let me just get into probably the Q&A session. We'll have a few questions, I'm sure. So let's get into it, guys. Bhavna, can you please give some questions?
I was busy answering in the chat all the questions. So, okay, let's see. One question. Okay. So Sirish Chandra is asking why holding companies are always at a discount to the value of the underlying companies. Vidya, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I can. Actually, Money has a holding company recommendation. So
Money, do you want to explain why? I mean, based on your own recommendations on holding company versus
Yeah, okay. Let me explain. So, because one important factor is the income, the way they earn their income. Because if we take the holding companies as a whole in India, because there are a lot of holding companies, so they are actually expected to derive income mainly in the form of dividends. Okay, so basically the ideal valuation methodology that should apply to holding companies is the dividend discount model, and in that too the multi-stage dividend discount model. That is what should be applicable to holding companies, and that is actually difficult to do. And in the case of companies that are not even earning dividends, that is even more difficult. But when we take the topmost holding companies like Bajaj or Godrej or Grasim, they have a certain character, because if we take Grasim, then the promoter group doesn't own any stake directly in their flagship company Ultratech. Likewise, Bajaj Group does not own any stake in their flagship group companies, not majority stake directly. They own through this Bajaj Holdings. Likewise, Godrej, they have been actually incubating even newer companies like Godrej Properties recently incubated a housing finance company that they are doing it through Godrej Industries, the group holding company. So the kind of importance that a promoter gives to the holding company is also very important in terms of the perception in the market. So the cash flows, governance, and the importance of the company to the promoter group is actually very important. These three factors are actually very important. Otherwise, if it is something like a Tata Investment Corporation that has just minority investments in group holding companies, the problem is that if we don't expect any kind of strategy decision from this company, then it will just continue to be driven by the dividend income. So in the case of dividend income, it is a dividend discount model that applies, and we have to take. So if I take the case of Bajaj Holdings that we have looked at, again, if we can take we know what Bajaj Auto is paying. It is paying handsome dividends. So on the one hand, it is deriving significant dividend from Bajaj Auto, whereas on the other end, it has holdings in Bajaj Finserv, which is a high growth financial services play. There, the dividend at this point of time is very less, but if we are to do a dividend discount model, what we have to do is that we have to consider the potential dividends, the potential payouts that the insurance subsidiaries can do and all. And so if we do that exercise, we actually arrive at a certain valuation, which is actually very closer to the present market price. So this is the way to go. And if we do a dividend discount model for a dividend earning holding company, then we will be able to arrive at an ideal valuation for that. And this case of Bajaj, we have arrived at something that is closer to market price. So again, sometimes like the 50 or 60% discount, that seems actually justified based on their earnings potential. So that is from my side. Anything, Vidya Member Bhavana, anyone want to add?
We'll move on to the next question because there are plenty in the queue. So quite a few questions have come on whether we will in our stock screener include the Nifty 50. I mean, as a, you choose your index instead of the sector. Along with the sector, you choose stocks in the Nifty 100, Nifty 500. It is not there right now, but it is something, yes, that is a good suggestion that we will look to incorporate in that screener. And many of you have also asked about the shareholding pattern. So there are, in the premium screeners, there are some screeners where we show, where we pick stocks where FIIs have increased holdings, FIIs have decreased holdings, promoters have increased holdings, MFs have increased holdings. So those are in the premium screeners. In the normal filters also, we have the FII and DII holding. And if you're interested in any specific stock, just click on the stock's name in the screener and it will take you to the stock details page where there is detailed shareholding. So you can, of multiple quarters, so you can also go there to see whether any of your stocks have increased FIIs or seen decrease in institutional holdings. Right. So another question from Mr. Venkatesh is dividend yield an important parameter while looking at value stocks? So, Vidya, do you want to take that?
Yes. Looking at dividend yield is important, but don't base your decisions simply based on dividend yield, right? So what exactly happens in dividend yield? It is the payout divided by the price, right? So when can your dividend yield inflate? Your dividend yield inflates when the price is depressed. It should ideally. So what we are trying to see is that here is a high dividend paying steady company, and it now appears to be at a depressed price. So my yield on it, it's like buying bonds, right? So my yield on it will improve if I buy it now, right? But what if this company like Moneyhead, given the example of Sun TV, is depressed in its price for a reason? It might remain a permanent dividend yield company. Yes, you might get decent dividends out of it, but please remember your return on it might not be more than 6-7%, whereas a stock, if it really rallies, may give you a far higher returns, like 15 or 20% and so on, right? So among the other things, among the quality parameters that you see, and whether this company has indeed seen some growth in the past and not been flat, etc. Along with that, if you use dividend yield, it will make sense, yes.
Okay, thanks, Vidya. Another question is not related to the screener or anything, but is related to our stock recommendations. And the question is, how often do we give stock recommendations? Are they open-ended or with the price targets? This comes from Mr. Sivakumar Sundaresan. So yes, we have in our stock recommendations, we do not promise any frequency. It's not like we are going to say one stock a month, one stock a week. No, because stock opportunities depend on what the market is. If the market is not going to throw opportunities, we can't promise something when the market is not conducive to it. So we give recommendations when we see opportunities. This whole screener business, we keep running it. We keep running it every other time to see whether there are any stocks that meet different criteria, which we can add to our watch list or then pick up for a recommendation. And we have, in between given recommendations also. So we are not promising a periodicity to it, but we will give recommendations where the opportunities are there. Now, we don't give price targets in our stock recommendations. We look at how the company can grow and whether the valuations are conducive to that growth. So as long as valuations are fine, the stock is worth buying. So we keep an eye on where valuations are and where growth is. And when we give recommendations, we are looking at it not from like a 1 year, 2 year perspective. These are all recommendations that you can hold on to for multiple years. So our approach is you have a mutual fund portfolio and then you add direct stocks to it to improve your returns. So they are all long-term calls that we take. So we don't give a price target, because as long as valuations are conducive, you can still invest in the stock even if it has rallied 20%, right? So as long as a stock is in the buy list, you can buy it. If we see that there is a need to change our call, we'll either move it to a hold list, which means you don't buy it, you don't accumulate it, but you continue to stay invested in it, or we will issue a sell call on it. We also issue, retrade calls. If we see that the price is dropped or there is an opportunity, we would retrade call. So as long as the stock is in the buy list, you can buy it. We don't give price targets because we're approaching it from a very long-term perspective, and we don't promise any periodicity to it. Right? So that is our approach in the stock recommendations, Vidya.
Yes, there was a similar related question from Shakir. So Shakir says, being an excellent team of people you have, why only very few handful stock recommendations? And that too, with this bull run, not one has surpassed 50% return when most of stocks had a bumper run. Is it because you came up with recommendations late or playing it safe? It's neither. So there is no such thing as a late recommendation. There will always be stocks in different markets that you can give. Whether we choose to give it is the question, Shakir. So in this kind of market, you actually don't need us recommending you. You probably have to ask your kid to, just pick 1 out of 5 stocks and you would have made money. That's the truth of it. And that's how a bull market looks like, right? So you have to be very, you need a lot of control and a lot of self-discipline to not give calls in this market, because everything looks like a screaming buy, and which is what we are probably doing. Especially, when we have very senior people like Aarti constantly warning us on, the kind of things that these stocks can do, we won't have us picking. So, but jokes apart, majority of those stocks will not come into our filter list, right? So if our own screeners, it's not the screeners that we are just showing you of a growth or a value. We have a very, very more, versatile and very, very detailed screener where most of these stocks, for example, I might want to, tell you even some names. Stocks in the past 1 year, like Proceed India or McLeod Russell or Tata Tele, these gave manifold times returns. There's no way they're going to come into our filters. And therefore, if you're looking for those kind of stock tips, I would have to tell you, you will not find them here, right? And please remember, our stocks are only in addition to what we think is primary to your wealth building, which is mutual funds and ETFs and deposits and so on. So our job, and please remember, our job is cut out because we are not brokerages. We're not under any compulsion to keep giving calls to churn your portfolio. We just want to select ones. One, if they enter our filter, and two, very importantly, let's be very frank about this, if we understand the business. Not all businesses are well understood. In fact, we like a few companies even at this point in time, but we think we don't know the business enough, right? We are a small team of analysts, so let's not act like we know everything. No, that's not the case. And when we don't understand businesses, we think it's not our business to give calls. And if we miss it, so be it. You will still have opportunities. We will help you build wealth optimally, but there will not be many of these, quick fixes happening. So that will not be our strength, and we want you as our investor customers to be aware of it. Right? Yes, Bhavna, and move to the next question.
Sorry. I didn't realize I was mute. Okay, so the question is, if I have a score of 85 in the stock ranking tool on all 3 parameters of growth, valuation, and quality, can I buy it without any doubt? Well, it's actually very difficult to get a score of 85% in all 3, because if it's already growing well and its quality is good, markets most likely would have already picked it up. So most often that valuation score is not going to be high when your growth and your quality scores are going to be high. But even if you do manage to find such stocks, blindly, no, please don't invest in it without understanding the company and the business, because the one limitation, let's say, is that all this is based on what numbers the company has already put up, the performance that is already put up. So you need to do your analysis to understand whether that kind of growth can still continue, right? So that is, so that needs you to understand the business, needs you to still understand the company and see whether the metrics that are relevant to that particular company, like Vidya had explained, are they good enough for you to continue, for you to invest in it. So the stock rank is not an indicator to buy or sell, nor is a valuation indicator to buy or sell. It is to explain how good or poorly the company has done in relation to the universe. Okay, so you need to really still go into it and understand. It's only the level 1 that we talked about. It's not the level 2 which Vidya was explaining. Okay, so let's see another question.
Probably the last question.
Yeah. Okay, so there is one question from Mr. Pankaj Parmar. How can we identify micro cap stocks that are going to have good potential? Vidya, do you want to take that? Or?
Yeah, so micro cap stocks, obviously, if you are looking specifically, like I said, have a goal. So it's good if you have a goal, you could give the market cap and, in the screener and try to look at them. Whether they have good potential, the one biggest thing when you have to know whether these will not be sparks that will go bust is to look at the quality parameter. So when you run the screeners, they should fulfill your quality parameters necessarily, right? So a micro cap which is going to give returns for the next 3-4 months and going, I'm not talking of those kind of stocks. I'm talking of stocks that will get re-rated from a micro cap to a mid cap or directly to being a mid cap or, very quickly grow. Their balance sheet strength is of utmost importance, number one. So look at all the balance sheet quality parameters that you need to look at. Cash flows are very, very important, so you might want to, things even like ratios like your operating cash flow to EBITDA, because you really need to know whether the profits actually transpire. They're not paper profits, they're actually cash profits. You need to make all those checks in micro cap. So those kind of metrics we will, over the period of over several months now, we will try and discuss about it in our articles. But balance sheet quality is very important. Second, obviously, when you're getting into micro caps, the idea is to see growth. They have to be growth companies. So don't bother too much about valuation. They have to be high quality companies. They have to be from good management. How do I know whether they get from great management? Let me just give you an example without really, talking about whether a management is good or bad. You would have seen, companies, recent IPO companies like, Sona BLW, which came out with an IPO. You saw the company issuing bonus of, 11 for every one share held just before in February. And they had issued shares at a much lower price. This kind of bonus really jacks up your capital base so that you can have a higher market cap and so on, right? So they had some of the bad businesses were removed and just kept into the promoter entity with a call and put option. These kind of things is what are the kind of red alerts that you need to look for. You will never be able to find this out unless you read the annual report end to end. Some tiny note somewhere may have some of the changes they made, or some of the, or they may be under compulsion from even PE investors, right? Some kind of window dressing. So it's very, very important. And window dressing can be stripped only if you analyze cash flow statements well, right? So the smaller you get into companies, the more you need to be a watchdog or a hound, as they call, in the accounting world, to look for these cues before you decide to put your money in those. So those are just my 2 cents.
So I think it's time to wrap up. We have gone past our schedule by 20 minutes, and I think everybody has a certain bandwidth for which they, I mean, for absorbing information, and I think we are well past that bandwidth. Thank you all for attending. If there are a few things from that you take away from this session, it should be that at Prime Investor we strive very hard to keep things real and be brutally honest about both ourselves and the research that we do. We are completely unbiased, completely independent, and we do everything only for the welfare of our subscribers. A few people asked us that whether there are going to be tools similar to the stock screener tool on the mutual fund side. We are going to be doing a whole lot of things both on mutual funds and stocks and others in NPS and deposits and things like that are going to keep rolling your way over the next weeks and months. So keep watching this space. And for those people who are attending this session who are not yet subscribers, who are in a trial period or something like that right now, I request you to please consider subscribing. It will be a great boost for us. It will support our efforts to stay independent and provide high quality research and recommendations for all of you. Once again, I thank you for taking time off on Saturday and attending this session. And I hope to see you again in our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.